Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Shelley Wilson. I'll be the moderator for this evening. And again, I thank you so much for your contribution tonight and your time this evening here with us. So I would like to point out we have some exits at the top of the stairs and 2 exits on either side of the stage in case there's an emergency. Not anticipating one, but in case we all need to exit quickly. So the purpose of the meeting tonight, the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, are hosting this public meeting to provide information and to hear your thoughts about a proposed on-site disposal facility to aid DOE's environmental cleanup on the Oak Ridge Reservation. Specifically, during this meeting, DOE will share additional details and accept input, hear your thoughts on 3 topics that were discussed in a previous comment period. And those 3 topics are: 1, site groundwater characterization; 2, the waste acceptance criteria; and 3, ensuring protection of water quality in Bear Creek. So just to give you an overview of how the meeting will run tonight, Roger Petrie with DOE will provide an overview of the proposed project called the Environmental Management Disposal Facility, or the EMDF, you will hear a lot this evening, and also go over additional details of the 3 topics. He'll discuss next steps and how to get more information and also provide input. So if you know of anyone who was unable to come tonight, who is interested in hearing this presentation, then we will have a recording of the presentation portion available in the coming days. So public input on the 3 topics presented tonight will be recorded following Roger's presentation. So those wishing to provide input or make a comment during the public comment segment of this meeting tonight were asked to indicate that on the sign-up sheet when entering the auditorium. So you will be called on in the order in which you signed up, and we'll have 3 minutes to speak. So if you're not finished with your statement in that 3 minutes, then we'll come back to you and you can complete it after everyone has had an opportunity to speak. So please speak into the microphone to ensure that the court reporter can accurately, and the recording can accurately receive your input. So please state and spell your name for the record. So I have the sheets where everyone indicated, and when we get to that portion, I'll call your name. And if you can, as much as possible, make your way to an aisle, and Sonia will come to you with the microphone at that time. So if you do not want to make comments verbally, then you are certainly welcome to give us comments on the comment cards that are available in the back of the room, or you can email them in or mail them afterwards. So before Roger begins his presentation, I'd like to introduce several people to you. So from Department of Energy, we have Laura Wilkerson here on the front row. Thank you, Laura. Laura is the site manager for Oak Ridge Environmental Management. We also have Roger Petrie with DOE. And then from the Environmental Protection Agency, we have Lynn Adams and Kathy Amoroso. There's Kathy. And also Samantha Urquhart-Foster in the very back. Thank you all. And then from TDEC, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, we have Steve Stout. So thank you, DOE, and to all our regulators for being here this evening. Roger Petrie will now present additional information on the 3 topics: the site groundwater characterization, the waste acceptance criteria, and ensuring protection of water quality in Bear Creek.
Thank you, Shelley. And hello to everybody for coming out tonight. We appreciate it immensely. One of the critical parts of our cleanup effort is to work with our community and keep them informed as best we can about all the things that we're doing. As many of you know, this is probably one of the most important projects that we have for the future of our program right now, and we felt it was really good. It'd be really good to have a presentation to inform you about some of the things that have been going on. Next slide. So, first thing is to understand how we got here. Back in 2015, DOE began a series of public outreach efforts. These involved reaching out to local organizations, local individuals. We had presentations for city council, League of Women Voters, other organizations. We had poster sessions as information sessions. And all told, we had, I think, over 40 separate events over time, and those are continuing. One thing that I'll point out is our website will remain up after the comment period as we go through this whole process of constructing and building our on-site disposal facility. In 2018, we had our public meetings and comment period for the proposed plan. That went for 120 days, actually reached over into 2019. Received, I believe, several hundred comments on the proposed plan. All of those were responded to, and the responsiveness summary of that was captured in the D1 ROD that was submitted last year. If you're interested, that's also posted on the website. In 2021, we submitted that D1 ROD and had a lot of comment from our regulators on that. Since that time, we've been working on that very hard and diligently with them. One of the things, it is very different from the ROD that will come out hopefully in July. And because of that, that was part of the reason for having this public meeting tonight. There was enough new information available and enough questions about that we felt that it would be a good point to have more information out for the public and to have it available for your comment. Next slide, please. So, as Shelley pointed out, tonight one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do a project overview, and the 3 main areas is site characterization for the groundwater. This is referring primarily toward the physical characteristics of the groundwater, the hydrology. How does the water respond to rain events, drought seasons? Where is the level of the groundwater in the site where we've selected to construct our facility? The next is determining what waste can go in. A lot of you are familiar with the term. It's called waste acceptance criteria. Some of us just call it the WAC. It will determine several different things. There's an administrative WAC that says these are things that we just will not put into the facility, and we'll go over that in the presentation. There's an analytical WAC where we do calculations to determine whether a waste that you've generated is suitable for disposal on-site or if it'll have to go off-site. And then the last topic, the last area of real interest is ensuring that the water that comes out of this facility, it is a landfill, making sure that the water that falls within the footprint of the facility and then is discharged is safe for Bear Creek, which is the receiving body for the discharges. And then once we've gone through all that, we'll take you through quickly through the next steps to getting toward a and then last, we'll cover again where you can send, if you have comments and don't feel comfortable giving them tonight, or if you think of something after tonight, we'll show you where you can send either an email or you can mail a letter. And those comments from that will all be captured And since this is a formal comment period, those comments will be captured just like the ones for the proposed plan, and they will be put into the next version of the ROD. Every single comment that we receive will be responded to in the ROD. Next slide, please. So this is a video that we have that gives you a general overview of the project, and then once it's done, we'll go back into presentation.
Our mission at the DOE Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management is to protect the region's health and environment, enable science and national security missions, and make clean land available for future use. Achieving this mission involves removing deteriorated infrastructure and environmental contaminants at the Y-12 National Security Complex, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and East Tennessee Technology Park that date back to operations during the Manhattan Project and Cold War. Demolishing these facilities generates large amounts of debris and waste. We currently use an on-site disposal facility for most of this material, while sending the highly radioactive waste out of state for permanent disposal. On-site disposal is key to our success in Oak Ridge. The existing facility has been instrumental to the pace of cleanup, including becoming the first site to remove a former enrichment complex. The current facility, however, is nearing full capacity, while major cleanup at Y-12 and OR&L is just beginning. Those sites house the largest inventory of high-risk buildings in DOE's national complex. A new disposal complex, the Environmental Management Disposal Facility, is critical to maintaining progress and completing Oak Ridge's important cleanup. A new facility allows us to continue transforming Oak Ridge by removing deteriorating infrastructure that poses risks to the region and opening land the community can use for new economic development. This cleanup is essential in facilitating ongoing and future site missions. Safety is our highest priority, and we have worked extensively with the Environmental Protection Agency and the state of Tennessee for nearly a decade to ensure all elements of the proposed site and the facility's design protect human health and the environment. Part of that process involved identifying the most suitable site for the facility. We evaluated 16 locations across the 32,000-acre Oak Ridge Reservation, looking at geology, groundwater flow, and anticipated land use associated with each site. The selected site is approximately a mile from the nearest resident. The proposed facility will be separated by a tall ridge that directs groundwater away from those areas and provides a visual and noise barrier. We have operated the current disposal facility safely and without impacting employees or the community for nearly 20 years. Our skilled workforce and design will ensure the same is true for the new facility. We conduct regular monitoring that tracks employees moving the waste and current conditions in the surrounding air, water, and soil. We recently began taking additional steps by sampling fish in a creek downstream from the current disposal facility. The results from those samples are nearly identical to fish in other local streams. We will ensure EMDF is safe and protective by implementing strict rules on the type of waste that is allowed in the facility and incorporating engineering and design features that keep the waste isolated. EMDF's waste acceptance criteria will prohibit numerous forms of waste, including all highly radioactive material. We have and will continue to send that waste out of state for disposal. Our design for EMDF uses numerous engineering features to ensure waste remains isolated from the surrounding environment. Crews will construct 15 feet of protective liners and geological buffers before waste is placed in the facility. Once it is full, another 11 feet of clay, liners, cover soil, and grass will be placed over the waste. Together, these features are designed to isolate the waste from rain and groundwater and protecting the environment. Together with EPA and the state, we are committed to a science-driven approach and design that ensures a safe and protective facility. EMDF is a critical project for the future of Oak Ridge. It provides essential infrastructure to continue our cleanup that is transforming the region, eliminating risks, and benefiting the economy.
So, following what the presentation said, the video, one of the main reasons for needing a new on-site disposal facility, like we pointed out, is continuing the mission here. We have a lot more demolition and soil excavation to do. Our current facility, as we pointed out, is over 82% full at this time. We still leaves about 20% capacity, but we've got a lot of work still to do at ETTP to get done. And that's going to eat up that capacity. And then we've gradually moved our work over to Y12 and ORNL. That's the main focus of our mission coming forward. Y12 has numerous facilities that have to be demolished, high-risk facilities, and so does ORNL. So our next mission then is to build a new disposal facility. Next slide. Those facilities at Y12, as they were shown in the video, these are structures that typically run several 100,000 square feet in size. I know it's hard to tell from this, but these are giant buildings. They were all built in the mid-1940s and a little later. They're primarily wood, concrete, and tile construction. These buildings were designed to last for maybe 10 years, and now we're 80 years out almost. So you can imagine they're not in the best condition. They've been used for a variety of emissions over the years, which have left a variety of contaminants in them that need to be addressed. A lot of these buildings are in an area called Weston Mercury area, where we use large quantities of mercury. The buildings have mercury in them. It is being slowly released into the environment. We need to get these buildings down and get that contained. At ORNL, the size of the buildings is not as large, they're not as large, but because of the nature of the mission that ORNL has had over the years, the contaminants and the threat from those facilities is a little higher. So it's either a big threat with a little building or a big threat with a large building from Y12. Next slide, please. So we went through a process of selecting a site. The initial selection process actually occurred about 20 years ago when we were looking for a site for the current on-site disposal facility. They evaluated over 80 sites across the entire reservation. As we began to look for a new site, we took that list and began with that list to look for a new site for the EMDF. And as you can see, as the video talked about, there were 18 sites we evaluated. We selected a site, and then we settled on this site on Bear Creek Road. It's about a few miles to the west of the current facility. That area just to the right of the selected site, what we call the Bear Creek Burial Grounds, is a historical area where Y12 used as a waste disposal. And then next to that is the current facility. And then to the very far right of the picture there is the Y12 plant. When we selected the site, we didn't look at just any one category of characteristic. We looked at the geology and hydrology. That was a factor we looked at. The proximity to the public, that was also a factor. Also, one of the things we needed to look at was what's the proximity, this facility will be under DOE's care for perpetuity, basically. So it needed to be someplace near our security. And obviously being close to Y12, that made that a little bit easier. All of those factors were put into the machine that we use, basically, to decide where we're going to put this facility. And the decision was made to put it in this location. Next slide, please. As the video said, this is not just a big hole in the ground. This is an engineered disposal facility. Actually, the design will be to what's called a RCRA subtitle C design. It's the design used for disposing of hazardous waste. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but it is a robust design. It is using modern materials. Some materials that weren't even available when we built EMDF will be used in the design of this facility. To make sure you understand that we're not compressing all the waste into that little layer. The actual height of the facility is shown on the left side of that picture. The liner system will be 15 feet on the bottom, and then there'll be 75 feet of waste, and then there will be another 11 foot of cap design on top of that. Currently, the proposed design that we're looking at will be for about 2.2 million cubic yards of material. That may vary depending on factors that we discover later during our evaluation of the site. We may have to alter design a little bit too, and that may adjust up or down a little bit. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we went in to look at the site. One of the issues was, where's the groundwater? Where's the bottom? Where's the top of the groundwater in relation to where the bottom of the facility will be designed? And being in the Ridge and Valley area, there's a lot of fluctuations. We need to know how much does the groundwater rise in response to rain events, and how far does it go down? What is the quote normal level of the groundwater? As you can see on this slide, we've got a little over 50 monitoring wells and geologic boreholes to evaluate that. One of the things that we're going to look at once we get the rod science, we're going to do what's called a groundwater demonstration project. The idea being that the facility itself has an impermeable layer on the bottom, the liner on the bottom. That rainwater that falls within the footprint of the facility will not make it down to the groundwater, and therefore won't recharge the groundwater underneath the facility. It'll be directed off down to Bear Creek. And because of that, it will drop the groundwater level right underneath the facility. We don't know how much though. So we're going to do this demonstration project. We'll clear the area, put a temporary cap over it, and we'll see how that responds, how the groundwater levels respond to that diversion of rainwater. Next slide, please. So the next topic that we talked about is what's going to go in this facility. What is our waste acceptance criteria? Because that's just as important, really, as where you put it. We're committed to continuing our disposal of all highly radioactive material to our western disposal facilities. This will include things such as transuranic waste, high-level waste, although we don't have any. We also include in the WAC a prohibition against spent nuclear fuel and greater than Class C waste. The other things is the guidelines will be that it has to meet all other land disposal restrictions that are set out in solid waste regulations for RCRA. One of the things is we won't dispose of listed hazardous waste in the facility. Next slide, please. The factors that go into this, TDEC, DOE, and EPA have been working extremely hard on this. A lot of people have been putting in a lot of time to try to determine how we're going to do our analytical WAC. DOE's agreed to do what we're calling a supplemental analysis, where we go back to the modeling that we used to determine the WAC initially, and we're putting in much more conservative assumptions about when would the facility fail, how would it fail, things like that, and doing the modeling that way, and then that will inform us about how much waste, what kinds of different waste we can put in there. Things that influence this are the environmental laws, like I said, ban on putting in RCRA listed waste, we'll agree to, and certain other RCRA waste. The design of the facility itself influences the waste acceptance criteria. And then, obviously, the site's geologic and hydrologic conditions. The waste acceptance criteria that we're establishing will continue to result in over 95% of the radioactivity from the waste on the Oak Ridge Reservation will continue to go out west, whereas roughly 90% of the volume of waste will still be remaining here. Next slide, please. So the waste is not generated. Other prohibitions is the waste that goes into the facility has to be generated from a circle of action on the reservation. We're not taking waste from Idaho, we're not taking waste from Hanford, Paducah, Portsmouth, any other site. This is all waste that came from Oak Ridge. The waste has to meet all the RCRA regulations. Again, I reiterate this, but it's important. We're not going to put RCRA hazardous waste in the facility, not RCRA listed waste. We're not going to put in transuranic waste. Our inventory of transuranic waste, which is in the millions of curies, that all will be sent out west. Our inventory of high-level waste has already been disclosed. That was several thousands of curies. Spent nuclear fuel, we don't have any, so that's easy. We're going to send all greater than Class C waste, which is high-activity waste, out west. And then in addition, we have a series of tanks over Mountain Valley that have sludge in them, similar, not exactly the same, but similar to what's in Hanford. That waste will be processed and solidified and shipped out west. That also is several million curies of waste. The inventory of EMDF, the most conservative estimate, is that it will hold a little over 13,000 curies of waste. So if you're curious, that's where we come up with over 95% of the activity is going out west. The stuff that remains is basically contaminated building debris. The one unusual thing is, the other thing that we've decided to do is we will not allow mercury characteristic waste to go into the facility. That means it has to demonstrate certain characteristics of mercury under the RCRA code, and that we've agreed not to put into the facility. The other thing that's standard is no free liquids. That's a standard solid waste regulation. We won't put any free liquids in the facility. Next slide. So the last thing we're going to go over is how do we protect Bear Creek? Here we have, I know it sounds scary, we have a low-level radioactive landfill that we're going to put into Bear Creek. Doesn't sound great. But we're going to do everything we can to protect Bear Creek. And the way we want to do that is, first of all, we're going to treat all the water that comes into contact with waste at the facility. That means all contaminated stormwater. That means rainwater that falls in the facility in contact with the waste and is collected, that will be treated. Water that comes in contact with waste and seeps down through the facility is captured, it's called leachate. All of that will be treated before being released. So this shows you where it is in relation to Bear Creek. One thing to point out here that is of interest is the closest point of public access is at the far left of the slide. It's called the Bear Creek Kilometer 4.5. That's roughly 3 miles from the facility. So by the time the water gets down there, it has been somewhat diluted by the tributaries that you see flowing into the Bear Creek. But the main thing is there's no fishing access, there's no public access to this area. Next slide, please. So how do we set protected limits for Bear Creek? How do we determine what's safe to discharge? Like I said, all landfill wastewater that is coming in contact with the waste will be treated. It will go through what we call primary treatment, which is, it'll be a combination of flocculation and chemical precipitation. Will basically drop out all the solids. Then, if necessary, we'll have secondary treatment available. Primary treatment doesn't get us down to our discharge limits. We'll have a secondary treatment system available where we can take the water and clean it down to levels that meet our regulatory limits. The discharge limits themselves will be based on the recreational designation of the stream. Under state regulations, streams have different designations, the most restrictive being recreational use. That means people you have, and this is important because this is one of the things that determines our radiological discharge limits is recreational means you have to be able to eat the fish that you catch in the stream. One of the questions we have that we've discussed at length with our regulators is, what if there are no fish? And that has been an interesting journey to come to the answer for that one, but it still matters. So one of the things we will continue to do is we will monitor the fish in Bear Creek. This is important because one of the things that we have found is that the fish are, as we said in the video, the sampling that we have conducted shows that the fish in Bear Creek already are the same as the fish that you see off the reservation. And understand, this is downstream from the current on-site disposal facility. So we're going to be putting basically the same stuff into the new facility as we did the old one. It's worth noting. Next slide, please. So we did a study to determine what was currently out there in the environment. This is actually one of the fish that was collected. It's a 1.5 ounce green sunfish, which in Bear Creek is the predominant species. 80% of the fish that we collected were smaller than this. So it's, I don't know if we have many fishermen in the audience, but it's hard to make a meal, too many meals out of that. But we did, we collected them and analyzed them, and what we found is that they do not have, they're not accumulating the contaminants of concern. So that doesn't mean we're off the hook. We still need to monitor, we will. But it's a good place to start from for us. Next slide, please. The other question was about mercury discharge limits. We want to be sure that we're protective of that. The creek is currently listed as impaired under state regulations, although it is improving. Lake sampling from the last several years has shown a downward trend. The EMDF will have a discharge limit of 51 parts per trillion, which is the discharge limit under the recreational rules. And all mercury hazardous, one way of achieving this is, like I said, all mercury hazardous waste will be shipped off-site, whether it's listed or characteristic waste. And then the landfill will have a wastewater treatment system that will, once again, treat all wastewater that comes in contact with the waste. And then we would continue, one of the things that we have agreed to do, and it's one of the ways we're addressing one of the regulations, is we will look at studies to evaluate how is, for instance, there's no, right now we have no known mercury source in Bear Creek. So why are the levels in the fish so high? This isn't unusual, it happens all across the state, happens all across the country. But we agree with our regulators that we will evaluate the conditions in the stream. Our partners at ORNL, in the aquatic biology division over there, are doing a wonderful job at beginning this evaluation. And we'll continue to evaluate. And there may be something that we can do to alter the habitat in the stream that will cause the stream to come into attainment. It means it will no longer be impaired, which in reality is the ultimate goal. No matter what you discharge, you want the stream to get back to good condition. And so that's one of the things we're looking at. That may be one of the goals that we have later on. Next slide, please. So what's our path forward? We'll take comments tonight. We want to hear what you have to say. Any comment you make during the public comment period, when we record it, we'll look at every single one of them, and then we will respond to all of those in the next version of the ROD, like we did the first version. And then EPA, TDEC, and DOE will continue to evaluate the design of the facility and how we're going to construct it, and all the things we're going to do to monitor it, and all the things we're going to do to limit what goes in and what doesn't go in. Tonight, so like I said, we'll take your comments tonight and incorporate those into the ROD and try to answer, if we can, any questions. But this is mostly an opportunity for you to get up and give any thoughts that you have. So, next slide, please. If you have questions after tonight, like I said, if you don't want to come up, or if you don't want to say anything, or if you don't want to leave a card on the table out in the entryway, you can send your comments to, you can either mail them to me, conventional mail, or you can email the address there you see on the screen, and those will count just like they were tonight. Any that are postmarked by June 7th will be accepted as comments. So that's it for tonight's presentation. I appreciate your time and look forward to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you very much.